How's it going, guys? This is Jay here with FantasyLabs, getting ready to break down this 14-game slate tonight with the help of Peter Jennings, aka CSU Ram 88. Pete, we're a month away from NFL. That's all. How excited are you?
Dude, I'm stoked for the NFL to be coming up. Been doing some drafts and really doing a lot of NFL research, which is fun. It's very exciting to think about the Sundays we have upcoming. And certainly, there's still a lot going on right now. So it's a great time to be a sports fan. Another great slate of baseball tonight. And the Olympics are going on, which I've been enjoying watching. So, how stoked are you for the NFL?
I'm pretty excited, man. Always excited when we get a new sport going, especially one as big as NFL. A lot of action. Definitely excited for week one. I was going to ask, just for some of these viewers, if you kind of treat MLB the same in this last month where you're kind of prepping for NFL week one. Do you scale your action back a bit at all and focus more on NFL, or how do you kind of manage that?
Well, so I'm still playing. In general, I try to use the summers to give myself just a little bit of time to recharge. In the past, I played a lot of golf. Obviously, I had a big injury this year with the Achilles, so I was kind of stuck on the couch for a while. Finally back out walking, doing some more stuff. So trying to recharge, definitely not, pressing to play every slate. And I think it's important to make sure you're feeling good going into the NFL season, because I will play baseball every day in September. There's a big advantage actually playing baseball in September because all the new NFL money's on. And after, an NFL week, people need another type of contest to play, and they'll often play baseball. So I think this is kind of the dog days of baseball. Still a lot of opportunities, still a lot of fun tournaments. I really enjoy it, but definitely a good time to recharge so you can play and really focus on the winter and the fall.
Yeah, it's a really good point about playing MLB and kind of maybe upping your action or getting back into it if you stop when NFL starts, because we'll have a lot more people on both FanDuel and DraftKings to kind of pick apart in MLB, guys testing it out a little bit, getting their feet wet. So I think that's a great point and something that a lot of people shouldn't probably overlook. But with that said, we're obviously both excited about NFL. Let's go ahead and jump into this MLB slate tonight and kind of break down a few things. And as usual, we'll start off with the lineups page and look at a few things that we got going on over here. So at the top, let's kind of break down. We had a lot of injuries on this slate going on. I think we had 17 or so players that were questionable or doubtful or probable. So a lot of things kind of changing. We have, the thing that stands out the most, obviously, is we had the Coors Field game already out of the way, which is kind of cool. We took a game that had a total of 12 off the board because it was a day game. So we don't really have to deal with that. How do you feel about that first, just kind of breaking down the slate without no Coors Field? It kind of spreads out the exposure for some of these top teams a little bit.
Right. It certainly makes it more of a challenge to how to make rosters and what to do. Coors Field's been great recently. Obviously, I play Coors Field pretty much all the time. So I'm a little sad to see it not be in the slate, but from a tournament perspective, it definitely makes things more interesting. And I think, you have to do a little bit more research and really focus in on roster construction, because certain nights when Coors Field has huge team totals like it did today, you kind of have to do whatever it takes to get the elite spots in that game in your lineup. Whereas now, there's the option to, take a high-end pitcher like Scherzer or Sale. I really like Maeda today as well, who we'll talk about in a second. But, you could play with an expensive pitcher and cheaper bats, or you could go mid-tier or even go a little bit lower down, especially in DraftKings, where there's a lot of options for cheaper pitching. So makes it more interesting, and certainly a variety of different ways you can go from a roster construction standpoint, which makes it a really nice tournament night.
Yeah, I definitely agree on the tournament night. And then one other thing that stands out, you can just see right away from the laps page, we have a couple interleague games. We have the Indians and Angels both losing a DH, playing at the Nationals and at the Cubs. And Pete, I usually like the value in taking an American League pitcher pitching in a National League park, because they get to face a softer lineup due to the pitcher batting. So you look at Bauer here, and he gets to face Scherzer, which could add 1 to 2 Ks. It's something I have extra interest in. You kind of know he should face Scherzer 2 times. Scherzer's 6 for 48 on the season with 21 strikeouts. It's just kind of a batter he faces instead of facing the usual Tyler Saladino or whoever. And the good thing we can see with this is we can kind of back test this data and look at a trend. So I created a trend with American League pitchers facing NL teams in NL parks. And as you can see, the difference is very minimal overall, kind of with all these. You can see the current matches for today's slate, discarding AJ Griffin, who's already pitched. But is this something, even with the minimal increase, is this something you ever look at and kind of try to focus on these pitchers? It doesn't necessarily need to be Bauer or Hamill or anybody in this situation tonight, but is this something you look at often to kind of find an extra edge?
Absolutely. I mean, that's one thing you're always looking at with everything in baseball is you're trying to find guys who are in better situations than they normally are, or have some advantage that they might not normally have. That's specific to these AL pitchers moving to the National League. Certainly gives them a big bump. Unfortunately, whenever they're moving, they're always going on the road, which is a disadvantage. But it's still something to look for, especially with upside and strikeouts. You mentioned Trevor Bauer, and I almost had to leave, threw up in my mouth a little bit. Rostered him last outing. That worked out really well. Solid negative 10 points on FanDuel, and DraftKings is some massive negative number as well. So Trevor Bauer is not very high on my list right now, but I think it's something to take advantage of, and you can use that same philosophy. Oh, there's an edge here because the pitcher is now getting to face the pitcher. Try to apply, where else can you find the edge? Is a guy shifting to a much more friendly park? Is a guy against a much worse pitcher than normal? Is he facing a way below average bullpen? Are the pitchers facing a team that strikes out more? You're always trying to find those different angles, and the best plays have a lot of angles lined up for them on a specific night.
Yeah, I completely agree. And just kind of to elaborate on the importance of analyzing lineups, I think a lot of people actually overlook the lineups. I mean, we have guys, we'll mention in a second, some notable players missing. We got Posey and Bogarts right here, you can see. But I think a lot of people look at statistics and data, just how a team overall does against a certain pitcher handedness or how a team hits on the road. But I think, like you said, the real edge is determining how the specific lineup of the night is projected to perform with those same pitchers. And that's something we have in our models page. When you click pitchers, you can see this strikeout at bat, team WOBA, which are constantly updated to reflect these confirmed lineups. So I think that's something big that you definitely need to focus on. And then alongside, we have Posey out after making the greatest play of his entire career, made one of the funnier plays of the season, sliding into third base, missing a game, which we kind of expected there. We have Bogarts getting a rare day off for rest. We have Paulo Orlando actually leading off because he's absolutely on fire as of late. I believe he's been hitting 500 in the last month or so, 3 weeks. So we have Carlos Santana playing first while Mike Napoli sits with the DH. So a lot of these things are out. Pete, how do you kind of take advantage of different lineups, especially with some of them leaving you with little time to maybe make adjustments with some of these guys sitting?
Well, you're always looking for opportunities with the pitchers that are facing weaker lineups, or, when you see a lineup you really like. We were talking a little pre-show, for example, like the Athletics. They have a great lineup tonight versus a lefty. So that's something that I would give a slight bump to. And also the biggest thing that's the most applicable is finding a guy who's batting in a spot that they normally don't bat that's advantageous. Paulo Orlando, for example, great example. He's been doing extremely well. You're looking for, obviously, the player to be a little cheaper and have a better matchup. Orlando's probably not the best play against Chris Sale tonight, although he could be a nice tournament play given that Sale does give up some power to righties. But, you're looking for just different things to take advantage of, and this is where I live when making lineups, is just looking through the lineups page and really trying to evaluate, what spots are the best. And you can look at line movement and other things to kind of confirm what you're seeing. So I think it's really beneficial, and specifically for tonight, there's certain spots that we've seen a lot of live movement on, which can transition us to hitters when we're ready, is the Atlanta and Milwaukee game. Just team totals for both teams have risen so much. It's incredible, basically more than a run expected from when it initially opened. So those are things you're looking for, and you just try to identify them as soon as possible and incorporate them into your lineups.
Yeah, for sure. And we can transition into pitchers real quick here on the model page. We can look at it. I think it's safe to say we probably both agree Scherzer is the best overall option on the board tonight. If you go to our K predictor, he does lead all pitchers by almost 3 projected strikeouts. But with that said, he obviously carries a high price tag. There are other factors. There are other pitchers at play. How are you kind of handling Scherzer on this slate where he's kind of above the rest in terms of consistency and strikeout upside?
I certainly don't mind Scherzer, but he's not my favorite option. On DraftKings, I'm considering him quite a bit. But on FanDuel, I'm probably going to go Maeda. So it's tricky to kind of decipher how to go through these guys tonight, because certainly Scherzer has the most upside and has all that K potential. But I still think there's enough value in taking some of the bigger bats that cost a little bit more to pair with Maeda. That's probably my favorite play overall. Sale definitely represents a great tournament option. And then going a little bit farther down, I mean, we had someone ask about Mike Leake on DraftKings. You could even go down to him. So it really depends on which bats you like the most. I think everyone's pretty properly priced with the exception of Maeda, who I think is the best value. But it just depends on how you want to fill out the rest of your roster. So on DraftKings, if you want a ton of the big bats, I have no problem go Maeda and Leake. But at the same time, I do think there's enough value that you could squeeze in Scherzer as well. So Scherzer's the number 1 overall, but I don't think he's the best value. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm pretty similar along that. I think on FanDuel, when you look at Kenta Maeda at 3K less than Scherzer here, facing Philly's supposed to score 0.4 runs less than Cleveland, I think it's fine for me to go Maeda in cash on FanDuel. I think on DraftKings, it's still a bit interesting, and I definitely want some Scherzer exposure. I feel good about Scherzer with the strikeouts, of course. I think in tournaments, I think Scherzer will probably carry the highest ownership. So it's kind of hard to talk yourself out of him. But for that reason, with the high expected ownership, the high price, which will get you off a few of these expensive team stacks or make it really difficult. And then you look at the Indians, who've registered a top 5 WOBA and ISO in the last 2 weeks. So I'm okay getting off Scherzer tonight if you're just playing tournaments and you're just throwing in a few entries. In these large field tournaments, you have to get a bit contrarian. So I don't mind picking off him and saving some money on hitting and kind of spending up a bit. On FanDuel for cash, though, I definitely like Maeda as well. What are some other pitchers you're kind of looking at in maybe tournaments on this slate?
Yeah, so I mentioned Leake is a guy that I think is really cheap and has an intriguing matchup. If you want to get really frisky, which I wouldn't, I don't love the play, but I've seen a couple people tout Smiley just for the K upside. I'm too nervous to do that in Toronto. I think I actually would prefer to just stack Toronto, and that's what the Vegas line suggests. Other popular plays, or not popular, but other plays I think people will consider are like Steven Matz, but again, don't love the matchup. I think John Lackey's fine, but the downside with him is he doesn't ever have like massive games. So I really like the first 3 guys the most. If you want to fade Maeda, I think it's a good option to go with Velasquez and just hope he has one of those huge strikeout games. Certainly has as much K upside as anyone. So he's another interesting option. But for me, the real consideration top-end plays are Maeda, then Scherzer, then Sale, and then everything else after that's getting pretty cute with the exception of Mike Leake, in my opinion.
Yeah, there's a lot of guys, exactly how you kind of summed it up, that are tough to have a lot of exposure to. And you look at the strikeout per 9 on the season with these guys, and you see Velasquez has upside, registering over 10 Ks per 9 on the season. Another guy I kind of like, first off, for Steven Matz, I'm a little bit off him. I'm still worried about the bone spur in his pitching elbow. I think it's still lingering. He hasn't been the same lately. His strikeouts, though, have been pretty consistent as of late, even if his points have been very inconsistent. So he's registered at least 5 in his last 6 games total. So at least that's promising, but the upside has been a bit lacking. And it's not a lineup that I love to pick apart, even though it is in a much more favorable hitter's park for Matz. But another guy I think for tournaments, and this is a guy I think will be very lowly owned, is Hector Santiago. And that's if you sort by strikeouts per at bat opponent, which is what I talked about from the lineups page. This is constantly updated to reflect confirmed lineups. We have Santiago with a favorable matchup, of course, against Houston. The Astros don't really have the best lineup when it comes to not striking out. And actually, over the last 2 weeks, they have a 26% K rate, which is the second highest in the league. This is definitely only a tournament play. I think he'll carry very low ownership. I don't trust him that much to consider him with that much exposure. I think he's worth a few flyers. And on the flip side, I like the Astros lineup in terms of pop. I mean, this is a perfect team for boomer bust. So I kind of like them even as a tournament stack, not necessarily just hedging against my Santiago exposure, but I kind of like both sides of this matchup. And then you briefly mentioned Chris Sale as well. Last live show, we touched up on the Royals' inability to hit in the last 30 days. They have ranked near the bottom in team WOBA and ISO. So I certainly like some Sale exposure on this slate quite a bit. I know the Royals don't have the best strikeout numbers, but Sale still has that upside potential. What are your thoughts real quick on, we should mention Zach Greinke really quick. First game back, are you going to have any exposure? Are you kind of worried about the maybe limited upside coming off injury?
I'm worried about the limited upside. I mean, I don't hate it, but I that's a play that I generally won't make. I want to see what he looks like. And the other part about Greinke is he just hasn't been the same Greinke, which, surprise, surprise, that big contract. I mean, he's been fine, but he's not. Last year, he was the elite pitcher. He's the best pitcher in baseball in some regards. I mean, I still think Kershaw was much better, but Greinke had an incredible season. So I think he's not the same guy. He's coming back off injury. I'm going to wait and see a better Greinke to return before I invest in him.
Yeah, I share those same thoughts, and I do think his ownership would be low. So if you did want to go that route, or you throw the max entries in a low-stakes tournament, and you want a couple of shares of Greinke, I'm fine with. But, yeah, I don't trust the upside overall to really go in pretty heavy with him or think of him as being one of the top pitchers tonight. With that said, let's transition into some hitters. I know this is a slate. We have a lot of teams projected to score a lot of runs. We have a lot of big bats, advantageous situations. I think at the top of our projected points runs, we have the Cubs, the Brewers, Blue Jays, Red Sox will all likely carry pretty heavy ownership. Going back to Labs page, though, Pete, I think my favorite team to stack on the slate is the Braves. Is that kind of crazy at all?
I love that stack. I mean, we're both long-term Braves fan. You've stayed on the bandwagon longer after I worked for the Rockies. My allegiance shifted a little bit. But, yeah, Braves, it's rare that they're one of the top or more intriguing stacks of the night, but I think it's certainly a great spot. Peralta's been giving up a ton of home runs. It's a great park shift for Atlanta, so they're in a much more hitter-friendly ballpark. And they have guys that can hit. The addition of Matt Kemp certainly makes the lineup have a little more pop. Like all the outfielders, Freddie Freeman has a little more protection now. So I think he's a great play, and they're certainly cheap because especially on FanDuel where they don't adjust the pricing as much for matchups. So I think they're a great stack. I think there's a lot of really good options tonight. Milwaukee on the other side is certainly a phenomenal option. I love all the guys. Villar, I believe, is rated #1 overall in the models, regardless of site. He's really popping. I think he's a fantastic play tonight. I like for value in the mid-tier range on both sites is Kirk Newhouse. So I think he's a really, really nice play in the outfield, batting 5th in that Milwaukee lineup. And then if you want to go to some more expensive guys that are intriguing, I mentioned Smiley earlier. And the reason I think some people might play him is the Blue Jays actually strike out quite a bit, and he does get a lot of Ks. But you look at the Vegas line, the Blue Jays are huge favorites here. And you actually get reasonable prices on some of these righty bats. Devin Travis leading off is a nice value play. Donaldson, obviously, versus a lefty. Encarnacion. Russell Martin batting in the 5-hole at a reasonable price. I think that's another interesting place to look. Much more expensive overall on DraftKings. I should mention my boy Tulo as well at 3.2K on DraftKings. So that's another place that you can look. I mean, we talked about some other good stacks. I think the Cubs are obviously an elite play. All their guys, Jorge Soler in particular, batting 5th today, I think is nice. And then the Cardinals also with a huge team total. So what are your kind of first initial thoughts looking through all the bats, Jay?
Yeah, you summed it up pretty well, but I'm going to go back to the Braves. They are my favorite stack of the night. I have them pulled up here. The lefty bats in particular, I'm trying to target. Freddie Freeman, I think, is a great play tonight. Markakis, 2,600, has actually been producing as of late for all the hate he gets. He has been playing pretty well. And then, like you said, these hitters are just so cheap on FanDuel. You look at the bargain rating, and every single hitter is above 85%. And if you shift to DraftKings, You have guys at 1%, 0%. I think I've only seen that like once. That's absurd that Markakis is a 2,100 price difference from DraftKings to FanDuel. So I think on FanDuel, you look at this team playing in a Hitters Park, facing against Willie Peralta, and you look at these prices, it kind of gives you the benefit of playing a Chris Sale or Max Scherzer, and then still having the ability to fit some other standalone hitters, like you mentioned, Edwin, or some of these big bats that you can just pick from these teams that you think will be high owned. So you take a pretty contrarian stack with the Braves, you pair it with a chalky pitcher like Strasburg, and then you also get some chalk hitters, big bats that can have Josh Donaldson, for example, someone we both love a lot, has that double dong upside. And this is an easy team on FanDuel to stack because of the cheap price. And then Willie Peralta, we can get into a little more. He has not been good at home at all, and you can actually pull up a trend on his home stats and look at this season, and he has averaged just 4.09 points per game on DraftKings in 7 home starts this season. So
nice trend name, Jay. Willie sucks.
Yeah, it's just kind of hammering home how much I like the Braves on the slate, And then, I think you summed up some other good stacks. I really like the White Sox stack as well. We can actually go to the pitchers here and go to recent advanced stats and pull up hard hit differential. And we can see that Edinson Volquez has by far not by far, we have Velasquez actually as well, but it's significantly more than the average. His hard hit percentage as of late in the last 15 days is 24%, whereas he's allowing 54% hard hit percentage. So I kind of like attacking Volquez on the slate. I think that's another stack that will go underlooked. I think a lot of these top stacks are kind of obvious with the Brewers and the Blue Jays and Red Sox as usual, even without Bogarts for the Red Sox. And then the Cubs, I think for sure are another one of my favorite stacks, even with their implied total. They kind of always seem to go under the radar, maybe because some of their guys are really expensive, but I certainly like the top 5 from that lineup. Digging a little bit deeper, I wanted to pull up the Athletics lineup tonight, which was pretty close to what we expected it to be. We do have Stephen Vogt in against a lefty, and that's because the backup catcher Maxwell is also a lefty, and they've had some injury concerns with other backup catchers, so he is forced to play against a lefty. But the lineup overall, we have the top 5 guys, all right-handed bats. This is a stack that I like quite a bit, facing Wade Miley. So with Smolinski and Semien at the top, we have Valencia, Davis, and Butler. This is a team I want quite a bit of exposure to in tournaments because they kind of have a mediocre implied run total at just 4.3. So I think you can kind of get some under-owned players in that, and then pair them with some maybe chalky pitchers in the rest of your lineup. What is there any other stack kind of standing out for you that we maybe want to build or put into a tournament?
I think we should definitely build with the Braves. Let me just bring up one other sneaky stack that I think is somewhat intriguing, and that's the Tigers. I don't think anyone's going to be on them, especially since their lineup hasn't come out yet, which is another way to get a team with lower ownership is playing the late league games. But one thing I think is intriguing about them is Wade LeBlanc gives up a lot of home runs. The one downside here is it is in Seattle, which is a big park shift away from the Tigers. But I think they'll be under-owned because of that. And some of the guys are still pretty expensive, which will keep their ownership down as well. So there's a sneaky contrarian stack. Tigers, it should be really low owned. LeBlanc does give up home runs, and Detroit is the road team, which guarantees they're going to get extra at-bats.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. We have a question really quick about Chad Cole facing the Padres at home in Pittsburgh. Nice spot. He did only allow 1 hit last week, just 6,300 on FanDuel. Is this a guy you probably want some exposure to, at least kind of in tournaments?
Oh, yeah. I love going him in tournaments, especially pairing him with the Pirates bats. A lot of upside, a lot of power in the bats. Love what Marte's doing. Polanco's been incredible. Hopefully Kutch can get it going. And Jaso is actually a really nice bargain, especially on DraftKings at 2.9K. So you could do a semi-Pirate stack. Maybe you use 3 of their guys with Cole, and then you can load up on the rest of your bats and the other pitchers. So I think that there's a nice correlation play. Also don't mind it on FanDuel as well.
Yeah, I agree. And I think at that price, you certainly want some exposure, depending on kind of how many lineups you want and your risk factor. But that price is just so cheap that the stacks we just brought up, the Cubs, the Red Sox, the Blue Jays, some of these expensive stacks, you can certainly fit them pretty easily. When you go a pitcher is just 6,300. So yeah, I like it for tournaments, but it's nothing I want to go anywhere near in cash games. We'll build this Braves team real quick, Pete. I'm assuming we want the lefties in here.
Oh yeah.
Maybe some Inciarte, Freeman, Markakis. Who's you want Kemp to round this out, or who do you want as the fourth on FanDuel because they're so cheap?
Oh, we're doing it on FanDuel. Okay.
They're cheaper there, man.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. I think that's smart.
Unless you want to do Deacon.
No. Let's do this. I'm down to make it a little different. Depends on the positional scarcity. Let's save an outfield spot. So I'd either go Ibar or I'd go maybe Adonis Garcia or Jace Peterson.
Yeah, that's tough. I'd probably go Garcia, hitting 6-hole there. So we keep some correlation with the 5 and 6 and kind of round it out there. And then, we can go to pitchers and go to all pitchers. And I think this is a team, you look at the pricing, it's pretty cheap. So I think in this spot, what kind of pitcher would you pair with a team that you know is going to probably have low ownership?
All right, so Maeda, I think, is going to be the number one cash game play. That's probably who I'm going to have in my cash game team. So let's go a little different. I'm happy with Scherzer or Sale. I'll let you make that call, Jay.
Yeah, I kind of like the Sale play a little bit here, but let's go ahead and do Scherzer because this stack is just it's so cheap and low ownership that I think we can get away with going a maybe chalky pitcher at the top. And we got your boy Neuenhuis, who you mentioned, and then we kind of fill it in with a couple cheap plays. We got a minimum price backup catcher. I don't know if you really want exposure to him. We have Pedroia at 3,300. But I think this is an example of a stack where you're getting these Braves guys, the lefty bats in particular, pairing him with the top pitcher of the night. You can even get rid of Scherzer and test out some other pitchers.
Yeah, test out Maeda too. Let's see what that looks like just real quick.
Yeah, Maeda, who saves quite a bit of salary. So this one is still Neuenhuis, Turner, Altuve. So we got some Houston exposure against my boy, which I actually do like in tournaments. So I think you get two Houston righties in that game is pretty huge there as well. So I think overall this lineup would be really contrarian, especially with these Braves guys, and kind of saving at pitching at the same time. So I think this is an example of a tournament team that kind of mixes some chalk with some contrarianism. And depending on the size tournament you play, you kind of need stuff like that. So I think, you kind of just pair your pitchers we just discussed with some of these stacks and then fill them in. Who are some of these fill-in guys that you like? I know you mentioned some Donaldson. We obviously love quite a bit. Some VR we like a lot in that game. How do you feel about actually just an entire stack of the Milwaukee Braves game?
Dude, yeah, that's what I think we should. Let's try to make one of those teams real quick on the show. I'd throw in Newhouse. We'd have to move off of Adonis so we can play Villar. I think he's all
right, well, let's just go ahead to the filter and get this game. And this is probably the best. Let's real quick. We can go to the Vegas page, and nothing stands out too much to me. We have minor reverse line movement for the Reds here, negatively affecting them. Nothing too huge, but I think the thing that pops the most is certainly, like you said from the beginning, is the total of this Braves Brewers game. It started at 9, opened at 9, and now it's at 10, and that's the biggest change of the entire slate. A lot of stuff not very big, or I don't think it matters too much with some of these minor 0.2 increases here and there. Obviously, we still have some time for this to move a bit, but I think we both agree our favorite line movement and game kind of in general is this Braves-Brewers game. So this just kind of reiterates the importance of looking at Vegas data. And when you have a hunch on these teams that you like a bit, you have the Braves on the side of being lowly owned. The Brewers will probably be a bit more chalky overall in the slate. So you can see the line movement here, which is strongly in their favor. Are there any other games or anything that kind of stands out to you on the Vegas page real quick?
I think that's the biggest thing I notice is the change in the line movement there. Certainly some other things to take advantage of the reverse line movement, just where things are going. You see that Houston really recently has steamed up as well. But let's make a real quick team if we can, potentially here with this stack and see what we can do. I'd love to lock in Maeda on this one and see what it looks like.
All right, yeah, we'll let me go to Maeda real quick, and you can look at the rest if you can see it. We got Freeman, Jace Peterson, VR, Inciarte, and Neuenhuis. So how do you kind of want to round that team out?
Let's just see. Let's optimize it and see what or do we have the filters? Can we, once we get Maeda in, can we get the filters just to include that game?
Yeah, let's just go ahead and lock in. Let's lock in Ryan Braun, get some Ryan Braun exposure as well. It's tough because the catchers in this game are both backups, and I don't love the upside too much there.
So maybe let's click him out and let's see what we can do.
Yeah, here we go. We got this optimized. We have 3 Brewers, 1-3-5 hitters, which is perfectly contrarian because you assume a lot of people just kind of take the top and think about correlation a bit more. But in these large field tournaments, I think you have to spread it apart a little bit. We do have VR and Braun and Neuenhuis, which are probably my 3 favorite Brewers. Regardless, we have the Braves lefties, Inciarte, Freeman, Jace, and we have Ibar as well. So, and then we get Russell Martin exposure, getting a piece of Toronto if they do go off. I actually do like Russell Martin on the slate, and I think he's a big step up from the Brewers backup and then the Braves backup Wrecker, and then we get your boy Maeda. So I think overall this team's pretty good. Pete, how heavy are you going to go with this lineup?
All right, I'll throw it in a tournament now. I like it.
Awesome. All right, what are some last thoughts you have on this slate? Just kind of either site, tournament, cash. What are some things you kind of want to leave these viewers with?
Well, let's finalize on DraftKings here. I think it's a really intriguing night. A lot of the bats that you want to pay up for are a lot of the bats in general are a lot more expensive. So I think it does make sense to play Maeda, and I don't hate going leak either, and just really going with the bats. If you do find some more value plays that you like, and there certainly are a couple out there. I mentioned Jaso's cheap, and there's some guys in higher spots than normal that aren't awful. All the Tampa Bay Rays are cheap for value, especially at the top. So if you want to fit in Sale or Scherzer, I don't mind that either. But on DraftKings, I think there's, especially in tournaments, a lot of value going with 2 cheaper pitchers and getting some of these big stacks in tonight.
All right, perfect. Yeah, there you guys go. Good luck in all your cash games and tournaments tonight, and we'll be back with you guys for another live show next time.